Hello and welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. It's Light 'em Up Wednesday. We're back with our live show, and we're back with a dear friend, a brother of the Leaf, and somebody who joined us quite regularly and who has been part of the Light 'em Up Lounge for such a long time. Now, finally, we have him here, we have him live, and it is a pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Barton Howard from Tubeaux here at the lounge. Barton, it is exciting and I'm truly blessed and glad to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. Welcome.
Oh, no, thank you so much, Reinhard. It is a sincere pleasure. It's an honor. Thrilled to be here. Been a viewer many times, a participant many times, and again, humbled and honored at the opportunity to now be a guest and share my story with the world.
Barton, you know that usually I like to start with the not so obvious question. I like to take a more philosophical approach and give everybody a chance to get to know you better. Today, though, I feel it would probably be appropriate to ask the most obvious question for everybody who's new to Tubeaux. What exactly is Tubeaux?
So Tubeaux is an invention that really developed from a need. While I was working in the grocery business, understanding the importance of space efficiency and space optimization, and understanding that there are a lot of spaces which we would love to be able to offer premium cigars, yet because of traditional humidor's size and requirements, that was not possible. And so ultimately, Tubeaux was invented by accident based on need to address the issues of space efficiency and space optimization, to thus grow the offerings in places that couldn't have accommodated that before.
And just behind you, people can actually see what Tubeaux can look like. But maybe what you want to give us a little rundown or a little sneak peek and tour into the world of Tubeaux.
So, you know, if you think about a box of cigars, you know, with, you know, general measurements here in the US, right? You're talking anywhere from 9 to 12 to 14 inches in width, and in some cases, the same amount of space and depth. And if you think about these cigars taking up that space, one SKU or one type of cigar within that space, you know, I recognized that there was a tremendous amount of space being wasted, quite honestly. And again, the boxes are beautiful and they serve a very distinctive purpose in the right setting. But with my background and understanding, you know, really the world of retail, and knowing that you don't have just space to waste, we had to get very strategic, almost to the point of surgical, on how do we really maximize the use of said space. If you think of a grocery store trying to have as many products in there that we can offer to customers as possible. And so it was by accident that I was at my office on a Sunday evening, and I've always been a huge fan of Tubeaux. And I set a Tubeaux down on my desk and I turned around for a minute. And when I turned back around, I saw the tube standing there on its own. And I thought to myself, oh, there's got to be a method to display cigars vertically in a way that's kind of a pusher, you know, like you would see at a convenience store or at a gas bar, on how they display and dispense cigarettes and, you know, things of that nature. And fast forward 2.5, almost 3 years, the clear conclusion was that something like that didn't exist. And thus Tubeaux ended up becoming where we are today. And tubes are such a unique area of the world of premium cigars. I've always been such a big fan because it provides some really natural protection for the cigars, almost a small humidor, if you will, for that individual stick. And I'm an outdoorsman, so I spend a lot of time hunting, fishing, and the protection that it offers to a cigar, introducing it into different environments, even just as simple as putting it in your pocket. I think most folks would be a little bit more concerned or reserved on how the cigar is being treated or protected, and a tube offers the protection and some of the other benefits. And so I was always very curious as to why tubes were not more popular in the market. And come to find out, it was very much the minority of offerings within the market. And once I then saw that most manufacturers were displaying the cigars in tube inside of a box, I thought to myself, is that really necessary? And what can be done in 10 inches or 12 inches worth of space? And in that same space, that would only hold one box of a 10 count cigar. I can give you 8 to 10 boxes worth of product in the same space that is needed for only one. As an example of, what's behind me, that's just over 12 inches in width and depth. And that unit right there holds 16 boxes or 160 cigars in the same space. You'd only be able to fit maybe 2 boxes traditionally.
Barton, we live in a world where innovation has become the state of the art, digital, disrupting so many traditional industries. So much going on that has only been accelerated through the pandemic and the challenges of the last 2 years that we all had to face. Now, here you are bringing innovation to an industry that has always relied on craftsmanship, tradition, heritage, century-old knowledge being passed down from generation to generation. What's that feeling like? And where do you see both the positive and the negative when you're trying to turn an entire industry upside down by something as new and innovative as Tubeaux? And we once phrased it provocatively in Cigar Journal, changing the cigar industry one tube at a time. How does that feel to you? Because I could imagine it's probably a double-edged sword to a certain extent. There's tremendous opportunity, yet at the same time, you're bringing something entirely new, even though for the better of the industry, and not to challenge what's there, but to take everything and everybody to a new level.
So I'll start by answering it with a comment that I heard from someone that I trust and take a lot of counsel from. And this is a seasoned entrepreneur that told me, if you've really got something that's going to change a marketplace or change a category, you're usually going to have a part of that industry be in very much agreement and supportive, and on the other side, a part of that industry that is very disapproving. And it's usually one or the other. This is either genius or this is either not going to work and going to fail. And if you've got that type of reaction, more often than not, you are really challenging an environment. But for me, the reason that I invented Tubeaux was not to challenge the environment in a way that would be received as maybe a negative, but more so, again, to your point, focusing on innovation. So through our solution, through Tubeaux, you've got the ability to affect all areas of the marketplace. We start with a manufacturer. Do they need to now build boxes when they have the ability to display the product without needing one? If you look at a distributor, the ability to go after more locations they never could have touched before because of space requirements. You look at a retailer, and this is the passion for me, is imagine now that a retailer has the ability to deploy some of these humidors in the places they already have relationships in their local community, and take a retailer and allow them to have an opportunity to become a self-distribution network and grow sales outside of their existing retail location. And in most cases, being able to capitalize on a lot of the relationships they've built with their customers who come into the retail shop, come into the tobacconist, but may also own a bar, may own a restaurant, may have a nightclub, a golf course that they manage. And now having the ability to capitalize on a lot of those relationships and form some partnerships to generate sales outside of their existing four walls. And then again, on the consumer side, is the ability to be able to have a very unique way to display cigars, and the beautiful amount of marketing that goes into the design of these tubes. They're gorgeous. And to be able to proudly display those in a way that has never really been done before. I'm excited that we have the opportunity to not necessarily challenge, but be able to bring about some innovative thinking into every element and area of the industry.
I feel like today is more than ever before, probably important to tell our viewers, if you have any questions in regards to TUBO, Barton's journey, and what the technology and the device truly means, how it works, whatever it might be, this is your opportunity. Please bring forward your questions either here at the lounge or via Facebook. Just put a comment underneath the live stream, and we'll definitely make sure to bring all your questions to the show and have them answered by Barton. Now, what I'm curious about, Barton, is you depicted your light bulb moment when you saw that tube standing upright, and you knew what had to happen. And it's been a tremendous journey ever since. But when was the moment when you felt like we got it? When you finally felt that there was approval, or at least acceptance by the industry itself, by the cigar loving community, and people where you feel like they know the ins and outs of the industry and they clearly understand what this means and what this could bring to the cigar world?
So I'm very fortunate to have some partners that are very innovative and creative thinkers. And as I developed this initial concept, I had some good counsel to be able to get some initial reactions from. But it wasn't until I went to the IPCPR, now known as the PCA, and I was not known in the industry. So that gave me a little bit of freedom to move around. And at the same time, also presented a unique challenge or opportunity that I had to address or overcome. And that is, how do I get feedback from the top down? I want to see what the reaction from the manufacturing community is, from the distribution community. And as I started to take some meetings with certain manufacturers at the IPCPR, their reactions were very much similar. And that was, they saw the renderings and immediately started asking questions like, who else has seen this? How many of these can you make? How fast can you make them? How does it work? And I was met with very little resistance. I was met with a lot of curiosity. And after leaving that show with that reaction, I knew that overwhelmingly the reception was positive and folks were intrigued to talk further, which gave me the confidence to know we're going down the right path. And that was really the validation moment, was seeing the reaction of several different manufacturers wanting to know if there was the ability to control it, to partner with me, and bring about this to the marketplace. Because I knew that this is a very old school, type mentality in this business. It's the cigar industry is really a passionate business. It's almost a romantic environment, right? Very, very little changes, and there's very few sectors of the private business world that has been able to maintain a lot of that structure and a lot of the respect for culture, a lot of the family values mentality. And so to see that reaction of initial acceptance as an outsider, again, was very encouraging to me that I was going down the right path.
With something as innovative and probably disruptive as Tubeaux, do you feel like it's all about speed to the market? It's all about hitting exactly the right moment, and timing, as we know, is so important in business often? Or is it more along the lines of what the cigar industry would usually rely on, and that is consistency, persistency, and evolving over time?
So I believe that we're best suited as a complement to the growth of this industry. A Tubeaux humidor, or being able to take our modules, that's the technical term, is a module that holds the different cigars, is really a complement into the right spaces. So this isn't going to be a perfect fit for everyone and everywhere, but they're going to be very specific sectors of the business where they can clearly see the value of being able to now have a solution to offer product into environments where the consumer would want it. Yet, because they didn't have a space-efficient way to address that consumer demand, the offering to the consumer didn't exist. So in the past, I met with many people in the very beginning, and I would ask folks, business owners of restaurants, nightclubs, bars, hotel lobbies, anyone that would talk to me as I was in the initial research and development. And I would ask, why do you not have a humidor? Why do you not have a premium cigar offering here? I don't have the space. And that was always replying with, I don't have the space for a traditional humidor. And so now with our smallest offering currently, that is the single bar back, and named it a bar back because I saw this sitting on the back of a bar in many places. That is 4 inches wide. And so now the comment is, if you don't have the space, well, could you give me the height and the width of a bottle of wine? And I'll give you 4 boxes worth of premium cigars in that same space. So it kind of addresses that question on, what is the other excuse now? There isn't one. And so some of our most recent deployments were on Bourbon Street, world famous Bourbon Street in New Orleans. You think about all of the tourists and all of the locals that are on Bourbon Street, and you're encouraged to bring your drink into the street and walk and experience the city of New Orleans, where I'm from. And how many cigars could be sold in that environment? And again, there was no space efficient way to be able to offer a tremendous amount of product in such a small space, because it's a premium. And if we think that space is a premium here in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, in other parts of the world, it's even more so. So again, it's not going to be the perfect fit for everyone. It's not going to completely change every aspect of the premium cigar industry. But if all I can do is bring about more questions, bring about more, why can it be done this way? Then that in of itself is a value add to this industry. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue to be able to be looked at and grow as an early adopter, because our mission here is to grow the industry and offer distributors, retailers, really the retail community, the ability to set themselves up for more sales, to capitalize on new sales and work existing relationships. And just again, bring the cigars to the places where the consumers would want them to be.
Barton, let me ask you about your personal journey with cigars. I'm curious as to how, for you as a well-established and truly successful entrepreneur, the cigars crept into the picture. Like, where did that passion come from for the humble cigar and the leaf? And as a second part to the question, with all your experience of premium cigars in the industry as such, if we were to take a meta position, kind of like the 30,000 feet above position, what's your look at the industry now, both as a consumer, but now more so as an insider and part of the industry?
So again, I without a doubt, I'm a romantic at heart, and you know, looking at the history for me in cigars, it reminds me the smell of my grandfather. You know, reminds me of some of the best moments that I've ever had with friends and family. And one of the reasons why I was so intrigued and wanting to figure out a way to become a part of this industry was because it's always an industry referred to associated with celebration. To this day, I have still not talked to anyone who has ever told me that they associate the smell of a cigar with something negative. It's, you know, golf with the friends. It's the once a year meeting up with my family as a whole. It's the celebration for a new child, a new grandchild. It's a wedding, you know, and almost every time that I talk to someone and they ask me what I do and I explain, you know, what I do and the industry that I'm involved with and thankful to be involved with, it's always folks willing to share some of their best memories and moments. And if you think how great of a conversation that is to have with somebody on a plane, you know, to learn about people, the folks that I've been able to meet and learn more about just because they wanted to talk about their experiences with cigars, has been one of the most enjoyable parts of my life thus far. And I look forward to keeping those conversations going, hopefully more so around the world. But the industry as a whole, again, we've had a tremendous amount of folks that have looked at this, those that have heard about it and have seen it. And there's either wild acceptance or wild disapproval. And you know, again, that's where it continues to remind me that likely I'm going down the right path. And there's some middle ground there that will allow us to bring about a solution to the marketplace that potentially can change it in a lot of aspects.
Let's face some of the adversity, because I'm curious if somebody is not immediately intrigued by the idea and by Tubeaux in an instant, in the blink of an eye, what's the main concern, or where do you see like that adversity coming from, and how could it possibly be overturned?
The first response is usually, it just looks so different. I'm just used to seeing a wooden humidor and, you know, shelves with a bunch of boxes, and to see something that's this wide holding, you know, 4 boxes worth of product. And it's an acrylic plastic based humidor. So when you walk in from the front, from the side, from the back, you can tell from 360 degrees that you're looking at a humidor. And so I would tell you that the biggest reaction that I would say would be negative is that again, old school mentality of that's just not what I'm used to seeing. And so once folks usually have an understanding of the purpose behind it, the story behind it, the need for it, then that attitude can change. The other is that you have some response to say, well, this is great. This solution's now available to go out to all of these other places that can capitalize and offer the cigars where the consumer wants them. So is that going to hurt traditional retail, traditional brick and mortar, traditional tobacconists? And that's absolutely the wrong way to look at this. Because if you're offering a cigar to a location where maybe was the only location that a potential customer that wanted to try a cigar, yet was intimidated maybe to go into a traditional brick and mortar location. Maybe it wasn't convenient. Maybe they lived in a small town and they don't have access to a traditional tobacconist. That this may be the opportunity to allow them for the first time ever to grab a cigar and join this brother and sisterhood of the leaf. And so this is about, again, it doesn't solve every problem, but if you look at it in a way on how can I use this, whether I'm a manufacturer, whether I'm a distributor, whether I'm a retailer, whether I'm a consumer, you'd be amazed at how many folks have just emailed in to info@tubo.com and said, you know, I'm getting ready to retire. And I've never been a retailer. I've never been a distributor, but I've got some good friends that have some spots. I could probably set up some of these humidors and grow some sales. And we don't have anywhere to buy a cigar in my small town. And so again, the reaction that's been negative has again not been because of the fact that they just are adamant that it's going to fail and here's a list of 10 reasons why. It's the fact that it's so innovative compared to the current marketplace that it's just leading to a lot of questions. But again, the questions are good.
Speaking of which, we have a few questions. One from our dear friend and brother over on Facebook. Mark is asking, could you categorize or further explain the style of shop or outlet or physical location that you would consider a prime customer and potential partner for a Tubeaux? He said that you mentioned Europe and Asia as well. Would you primarily look at smaller shops, upscale bars and restaurants? Like, where do you see the most potential and sort of your prime customer?
So great question. And all of those locations that you mentioned are a yes. And I will answer the question by saying this is a different way of looking at it. And it is a mathematical equation. And again, this is something that is met with curiosity in how I would explain this as the answer. That if you think about the foot traffic that's associated in a gas bar or in a convenience store, you think that everyone who's walking into the hotel lobby, you think about the amount of foot traffic that's associated at a festival that's outdoors, and the ability to capitalize on a mathematical play on the foot traffic, that the locations that have the highest amount of foot traffic, and if you can offer cigars into those environments that are high foot traffic based, it's a mathematical guarantee that a portion of that foot traffic is going to be a first time, a periodic, or regular consumer of premium cigars. And so if you think of a visual associated with, say, friends are heading out to boat somewhere, they're going to get on a lake or head out to fish, or they're going to maybe play golf. Well, when you leave your home or leave your hotel and you're heading there, is it always the case that it's easy to stop by a traditional retailer tobacconist? It's not, especially if you're in non-metropolitan environments. Yet not everyone who pumps gas smokes cigars, but almost everyone that smokes cigars pumps gas. And again, by having this solution in a space efficient way and identifying, to answer the gentleman directly, identifying where you think it could go best is usually going to be the right answer, because you know your community, you know your town, you know your area better than anyone else. And this is now a tool that someone can use. A consumer who wants to set up maybe a retirement opportunity for a little bit of side income, a retailer who wants to grow non-traditional sales outside of their store, a distributor who may be distributing to certain locations now, but can now capitalize on the other locations they never could have gone after before. And then the manufacturer's benefit is that using this as a tool to grow sales in different areas, they benefit from the increase in sales and demand.
Excellent, thank you. We have Peter here with us at the lounge, and he had a couple of questions for you as well. Peter, would you like to address them directly?
Yeah, I've probably got at least 24 questions.
Fire away. You've got all the time in the world.
Yeah, I'm not in either camp of the person who might be in favor or who might be opposed to it. I'm probably more in the skeptical, just based on my own lifestyle and the way that I consume cigars. But
great.
When you place one of these, or when they get placed, will they be fully stocked?
Yes.
And
so, yes.
Who's in charge of selecting what goes in them?
Well, again, that's all, the conversations that we have with everyone who's expressed interest. And they may have specific requests to say, I'd like to place this somewhere, but I know that this particular location would sell this particular cigar very well. We get into this conversation and we want these conversations. So I love the fact that you're skeptical, right? Because hopefully, if I can maybe move you just a little bit to the, hey, I'm not skeptical, I'm now kind of more intrigued and see where this can go. That is a step in the right direction for us, right? Because it is challenging an old school environment, right? A very traditional environment. And so there's so many different ways to answer the question. We have the smaller units, and so you are limited to how many different SKUs or how many different brands that you could put into those smaller units. But where it gets really interesting is when you can take an existing humidor that may be 4 feet wide by 6 foot tall, and the module that holds that cigar, the box, the humidor, if you will, can be whatever shape and size it needs to be. The same module that sits in these small units are also the same modules that can retrofit an existing walk-in humidor or standalone humidor to increase volume of offerings. So let's say that you have a shop you visit that doesn't have a very large humidor, and maybe it's a 4 foot wide by 7 foot tall. And in that space, you have probably about 46 inches worth of usable shelf space to display existing product in boxes. Well, now because of this solution, you could retrofit that space to go from having 40 boxes of product to 250 boxes of product in the same space, and now increase the amount of offerings that can be done. So again, it's about addressing if there's need for growth, but you don't have any more space, I got you. If it's about producing and solution to go somewhere where they don't exist now, but again, don't have a lot of space, we got you. And
have you spoken to manufacturers who don't currently produce Tubeaux and they'd be willing to do so? Because I would guess that 80% of the cigars in my shop's humidor are not available as Tubeaux.
well, that is a great question. And what I can tell you is that I have invented the ability to also display and dispense cigars that are not in tube in the exact same way.
That's cool. And once these modules are placed, say in a hotel lobby, who's in charge of restocking them?
Well, and that becomes the model that can be offered by someone like yourself. So you can ultimately work a deal, if you will, with the property management to say, I'll continue to restock this and I can pay you a small percentage of sales, or you can buy the product from me, create yourself as a wholesale distributor, and they can be responsible for replenishment and restocking. There's no one answer fits all. Okay. I was just on the phone with a gentleman yesterday who owns 2 bars in South Florida. And he put 2 of these smaller humidors in his bars. Well, then he also had a friend that owned 2 grocery stores. And so now he's got the ability to go after the sales in that grocery store location because he's got the solution that can offer it to them. They had previously not brought in cigars because they didn't have the space for a large humidor.
Sure.
And so, again, there's no right answer that fits all. It's about, again, just because you can offer this to start the conversation, to see where the business can be, is more than what was available previous to TUBO.
I'm just thinking as a consumer, what I would do or how I would use this. And if I was going to purchase 1 or 2 or 5 cigars out of that, it would have to be with the intent of where I'm going to smoke them. I'd have to have that thought, because all the scenarios that you've mentioned so far, like a festival or a golf course, people can easily smoke them. And so the person that's buying them has to have that in mind, right? And that to me would limit it to a certain degree, because most of the people I know smoke cigars, they've got enough of them at home that if they're going somewhere, they'll just take them along. The other thing that I wonder about is somebody buys some of these cigars, they also have to have the means to cut them and then light them, and that I don't know how that's going to work out either.
So if you think about the 2 great questions, so if you think about the design of most cutters, the design of most lighters, we also have the capability that have modules, which again are a spring push base, right? Which would allow you to display both cutters and lighters in the same unit. And so again, where you're sacrificing maybe 1 or 2 spots for cigars, you can take that space and display a very, a good price point, say a $5 to $10 single torch, or a small, dual cutter. That again, you sacrifice maybe 2 or 3 total spots where you would have had cigars, but still have all of the accessories and the cigars in the same unit. We've also seen the majority of the deployments where they just put a small display like you would see in any traditional tobacconist, where it's a set of cutters and a set of lighters that are on the counter next to the humidor, where they can purchase those as existing sales. And so to your point, many current consumers that may have a humidor at home, this may not be their most ideal way, right, to bring those cigars to where they're going to go because they plan ahead. But how many times, even though I've got two large humidors at home, that I'm getting on a flight or I'm heading to a place that I didn't intend to go. And all of a sudden I realized that two of my friends are going to be there. And oh, would I have loved to know that this was taking place and be able to bring those cigars with me. And now if it was available at this one pro shop, at this one convenience store that I knew was on the way to where I was going, that I could have stopped and picked them up, which again, did not exist prior to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think of the times that I've flown to a different destination, and the headache it is sometimes to take cigars and you don't know what lighters they'll allow on the plane. If it was in an airport or nearby when you got off the plane, that would be cool.
Or even in the duty-free shops.
Right.
You know, that would be available, you know, in many of the international terminals. Again, all of those environments that you're thinking of, the majority of them do not currently offer a program. And the majority of that reason is because they think they have to have a large humidor to offer enough SKUs or enough choices to the customer that would make it a valid stopping point to consider doing business with that retail establishment, whatever type of retail establishment or hospitality establishment may be. And, you know, we refer to our smaller units as the barbacks. We refer to our larger units as the caddies. And I actually call it the caddy because the golf space, as an example, is one of those markets where you walk into a pro shop and you may see 3 or 4 cigars that are being offered. Yet they're sitting in one of these very long, you know, coffin style, open the top and have to stick your hand in there to get the cigar. And they're not clearly displayed. And in that same amount of space, now they can offer 10 times the amount of product just by bringing about more space efficiency.
Right. I don't want to hog all the time here, but you did I hear you say that you've got the ability to put non-Tubeaux cigars in these?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I can tell you that we have a particular location that I use as a research and development location that's become a very dear friend. And when we deployed this inside of an existing retail tobacconist, where on average he had 4 facings per shelf, he now has 44.
Are they controlled by Bovitas, the humidity?
That's correct. So inside the units themselves, the smaller ones, you have the ability as a small storage shelf at the bottom. That is a drawer that pulls down where you can put 1 or 2 of the 60 grams. And then on the larger units, it's a drop down where you can actually put in a 320. And part of my research and development was that I actually sent these humidors to Boveda, and they conducted the first ever tests and certification on a humidor. So certified fresh provided by Boveda.
Well, the needle is shifting. And so thank you for your time.
I spent almost 3 years in research and development, asking as many possible questions as I could. And the modules themselves are width expandable. So whether you have a 40 ring gauge all the way up to a 62, the module expands to be able to accommodate whatever size of ring gauge that you would like to be able to display.
Very nice.
Peter, many thanks for your questions. And before we jump over to our dear friend Brian in California, one question or one comment from Eric over on Facebook. He said he can really start to see the potential in this. And ultimately, he thinks though that it very much comes down to marketing. And as a side note, he said nothing better than social media. But Barton, how do you think about that? And where do you feel like the the potential of reaching the people and spreading the message and the word truly lies? Like, what is your approach when you think about marketing and bringing TUBO to people's attention?
It is such a great question. I'll answer it in this way. I never understood how many areas that this could positively affect until I found out that one of my humidors is now in the mess, the officer's mess and the NCO's mess on a submarine. And there's a tradition that as submariners are pulling into port, and this may be also the tradition amongst surface warfare ships as well, I don't know. But I found out that one customer of ours acquired two of the humidors because they always wanted to have some extra cigars to keep while they were underway, and actually put these humidors on his submarine. And again, I was always thinking space in Asia, Europe, the US, or a countertop in a convenience store. I never would have imagined that here's another environment where the right person, and going back to the original gentleman that asked the questions about the most ideal environments, I would have never been able to think that a marketing play could be that this could go on a submarine. But what a space where space efficiency and space optimization is about as critical as it gets. And so the marketing is actually become almost kind of the vision of the partner, of the buyer, of the consumer, because again, they know their community, they know the use of this in the space that they can potentially capitalize on, whether bring about more product in their tobacconist location, or to, as this lieutenant commander on a submarine said, I can finally put cigars on the sub from my fellow officers and fellow NCOs. So yes, marketing is a critical element of this. And again, we're in a position right now by really publicly just launching this at the PCA in 2021, in July of last year, that we have no clue as to where it can go. But it's conversations like this that help tell us the story on where it needs to go.
Absolutely. Over to Brian, over to California.
Hello. The cigars are like, I'm on a boat, bitches. All the other cigars are jealous, you know. I like this. This is really fascinating. I feel like I'm a little bit kind of at like a timeshare presentation. I think if I went to a timeshare presentation, I would want a cigar with me, and I'd want it to be somehow revolving around cigars. So this is great. I wanted to compliment the name Barback. I like that. I've had pretty much every terrible job in my past that you can think of, and I've been a barback, so I appreciate the shout out. I think this is great. I think from like a practicality point of view, this totally makes sense. Like all the conversation about size and economy and how much you can fit. And last week, actually, we were talking a lot about spaces and how that's difficult, especially in Europe. And we were talking about how, you know, manufacturers are putting out a new cigar every year, and they have to keep doing that to please the people. Where do you put it? We don't have space. There's only so much shelves. Something else has to move to make room and all that stuff. So I think that totally makes sense. I think from another point of view, I guess I'm curious about just the aesthetics of it. Like you were saying, a lot of people's apprehension is just, oh, it looks so different. I'm so used to this other thing. You know, like for me, for instance, recently I just bought too many cigars because I got excited because I'm always on the call, and I just ordered a bunch that came in the mail, and I have a nice little I have a little humidor box, and I didn't have space, and people are like, you know, grab a Tupperware, that works, you know. And I bought just like this cheap little glass jar on Amazon with a little wood in it, on the bottom. And so I put a bunch in there and that worked. But then I'm like, where am I going to put this in my room? Like, I'm like, this to me didn't look sexy to display. And so like, I think some of it is just, there's something about cigars and the look of things. And there's an association with wood. And like, you can get the little wood sticks, you light the stick and then the stick burns and you light your cigar with it. And just when you go in the cigar boxes, a lot of people put a lot of work into the boxes and they're sexy and they have the logo and the story and everything. And so I'm just wondering, from just like the look of it, like from a display point of view, what your take is and what people's feedback has been. Like, does the cigar itself, because it's glass, then take on more of a role of being what the customer sees? Like, maybe the band, maybe it start this, like this one's not very exciting to me. I think that I have, so it wouldn't really draw my attention. I wouldn't be like, oh, that's so sexy. So yeah, I don't know. Does that question make sense?
It does. And Reinhard, if it's okay with you, maybe what I can do is share a screen to be able to show a visual of a larger deployment and give you the ability to see the advantages of the visual of the tubes in close proximity to each other, which also explains kind of the efficiencies on space, but how it compares to traditional box deployment. So Reinhard, would that be okay if I shared an image?
Of course, please.
Sure. So here is a photo of an example on the same space. Here's 4 boxes. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I still have space over here that you couldn't see for probably an extra 2, and then an extra over here next to the nub. So again, 4 boxes, or in this case, 3, 25. And the visual of having those tubes next to each other and kind of the hybrid approach from that visual is about respecting the old, but at the same time introducing the new.
Right.
And
That totally, yeah, that makes sense. Because there's something about like tradition within the cigar industry, and people are maybe apprehensive to change and new things. And I'm just imagining a scenario. Imagine like a huge lounge, and they have a giant humidor, and they're just not maybe concerned about space in that scenario. I guess sort of what would be the appeal? I mean, they look great. It almost looks like a freezer with beer, at the convenience store.
so I'd like to answer your question in a way from a tobacconist perspective. So the location that I used for research and development, his biggest need was the fact that he wanted to bring in more product. He was running out of space in almost a 600 square foot walk-in humidor. So he looked at this to be able to say, I am a tobacconist. I have the demand for more product. And how can this help me? So here is a picture. Peter, this may be of interest to you from your questions associated with what it can be done, not in tube, but also another visual example on the hybrid between respecting the old and respecting the new, and answering or asking more questions. So this here is a prime example of a shelf, all of which this entire set here is not in tube. And those are the cartridges that hold individual cigars that are in cellophane. And so I think it's a very nice hybrid in bringing about more product at the same time of being able to still break up the visuals associated with, again, respecting the old, but appreciate and offer the new.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, cool. Totally answers the question. Thanks. Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Thank you so much.
Barton, the wonderful thing, as always at the Light 'em Up Lounge, is that we truly have our global family all together, and that we're able to build bridges amongst the global cigar community and family. So we have people logging in from Esteli, from Mexico, all over the United States, and here's Oleg sitting in the Ukraine, joining us leisurely, sitting at the lounge with a cigar. And I believe Oleg, you had a question for Barton as well. Welcome, my friend.
Yes. Thank you, Reinhard. I think Monte A will not be able in your humidor. So my question is, I saw the short video with Rocky Patel. Maybe Reinhard or someone else asked about this question, but I want to ask what the idea. It was a Rocky's idea or yours idea to have a Rocky Patel humidor, or collaboration with Rocky Patel, etc. Maybe you have collaborations with other producers of cigars.
Great question. So yes, as you can imagine, being an outsider from the industry, right? That ultimately I knew that I had, or I felt and still feel that I have a very unique product that has a very specific need in this industry. And, when I started meeting with many of the different manufacturers, Rocky is an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. And what I can tell you that he really puts his money where his mouth is, by way of here in the United States, as an example, one of the largest contributors in support of funding and lobbying on behalf of the entire industry. Not the big manufacturers, but the small manufacturers as well. And when I approached many of these manufacturers, I knew that the only way I could ever get this to market was to really be able to have, hopefully, a champion, a partnered champion that could see what this could do for the industry, as well as benefit his organization as well. And so he was the first person who basically came forward and said, I know how we need to introduce this. I know that this has some strategic advantages to my company to be able to be the forward leaner. And at the same time, what we've done is we're really making history, because we have already gone to several global manufacturers. And I've had this exact conversation. Rocky's had this conversation. Nish, Nimish, Dave Bullock, our director, our vice president of operations, Darren Thibodeau, down at our facility in Naples. We've had many of these conversations with the other manufacturers and said, hey, would you like to join us on this path? And let's figure out a way to not just introduce Rocky only, not just introduce Fuente only, not just to introduce, other boutiques or other large manufacturers only. We want to have the conversations with any and all that want to participate in this space, because they have a need to be able to grow their product into other areas. So Rocky really bought in to the fact that this can be a major game changer in our industry for the good. And to be fully transparent, there was never a time where Rocky actually expected or assumed, even implied, that he was going to be able to use this exclusively for Rocky. Consumer demand wouldn't allow it. Coca-Cola is the largest bottling company in the United States. And if you think that they could own the entire shelf, if they had the chance to do it in a grocery store, they would. Customer demand would not allow that. And Rocky was smart enough to see from the very beginning that while selfishly anybody would love to be able to slap their logo on this and say, you can only have this if you put Rocky Patel product out there. But he also knew that the industry was not going to allow that to be successful, that we had to open up our arms and ask the question on, hey, this is innovative and this is new. We know it's not for everybody, but who wants to join? And
I can tell you guys awesome.
Yeah, again, I spoke with many companies and still have great open dialogue and relationship with many companies, and was given a tremendous amount of support. But my hats off to Rocky, to Nish, to Nimish, to Dave Bullock, the entire team, because not only did they say, we think this is cool, they were the first to step up and say, not only do we believe in this, we're willing to get behind it and help this thing grow for the better of all. So I can tell you unquestionably that Rocky is truly a champion of this industry and is trying to use this to be able to grow this industry. And of course, he has some benefits to being the leader, right? And being the first global manufacturer to introduce it. But he's the furthest thing from selfish either.
So was the first guy who was playing poker was you in video?
That was me, yes.
Oh, okay. So cheers and really good luck for your innovative system, and really I really appreciate something new, and I hope it will works on the shelves around the world. So cheers.
Well, thank you very much. Hey, cheers. I after this meeting, which I've been very nervous for, to be honest with you, I intend to move on from bottled water as soon as we're concluded. And so I'll reoffer my glass of scotch here whenever Reinhard tells me it's time.
I hope vodka inside.
Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you.
Barton, as much as I would love to give you an opportunity to go and grab a bottle of scotch and the proper nosing glass, we have plenty of questions still. A very smart one actually from Mark over on Facebook that I think is excellent and on point. He was curious as whether you did any research on long or at least midterm effects of vertical storage versus the more traditional horizontal storage of cigars. Do you think that would have any impact, or did you do some specific research on that?
So all of the research that we did was about making certain that we offered the proper environment for the cigar's health from a humidity perspective. And again, as we were designing the humidors themselves, we knew the most important thing was going to be the seals on the one place that we have an opening. And looking at, again, as we sent these units to Boveda, and actually a shout out to you, Reinhard, because way back in the day, if you recall, you actually had the Boveda team on, and I'd never met them. And I actually messaged them because of what you invented with Light 'em Up when I was in the very early stages of this, and asked if they'd be willing to take a meeting with me. And here's, the CEO and COO and co-founders of Boveda that, because of this environment, gave me a one-on-one. And I got 30 minutes to show them what I was working on. And they then offered, send it to us. We'll put it in our labs. We'll do a smoke test, find out where your seals are failing, find out where you could better control humidity. And then also maybe there's an opportunity for us to get involved in, helping you in some way, shape, or form, because they saw this as an opportunity where if this becomes wildly successful, there's going to be a need for proper humidification. So they were smart enough businessmen to see that this was an opportunity for them to grow their products as well. So, that is a great question. And I have never, in almost 3.5 years of research and development, as we continue to do research and development and innovation based on customer requests, I have never come across anything that would have disclosed or even identified long-term challenges on storing the cigars vertically rather than laying them down. That being said, though, let me bring up an interesting response to it. I did not ever design Tubeaux to be the solution on where you would store cigars long term. Even though this is my company and I invented this product, I still have 2 traditional humidors at my home, and I have 1 of my Tubeaux. And again, this solution, this invention, I intended more to bring about the product into the environment that are going to consistently turn inventory and capitalize on that space efficiency and space optimization, rather than this being a long-term solution for multi-year or longer storage of premium cigars. Most of the folks that have actually bought these humidors to bring them to their homes, if you will, they're wanting it to just be a cool display, right? They still have their traditional humidor, but they thought this would look great next to their pool, or they thought this would look really neat on the counter to light up the cigars at night. We've even had requests for, can we offer LED lighting inside, which we do have LED lighting now, but can you ever do it on a color changing LED where I can pick the mood and make it blue, or make it red, or make it green? Because, you know, that hue lighting, right, that came to market a couple of years ago that you see so much everywhere. So all of those kind of questions are what we want. But I got to tell you, I will absolutely, at the conclusion of this call, I'm going to get back with my entire engineering team and see if they're aware of anything associated with current challenges or things that we may need to consider if someone does have the intention to use this for long-term storage. Probably one of the best questions I've ever gotten. Thank you for that. Great question.
Well, Barton, I'm always glad and honored, and also thank you for the wonderful comment that, again, Light 'em Up is here to build and foster the community and the camaraderie. And I'm glad and grateful if that is actually the case, and we have the opportunity to bring people together, to bring forward exciting questions, and to strengthen relationships in the community and camaraderie within the cigar community. So that is greatly appreciated. Speaking of the bigger picture, yet again, the industry most certainly has seen tremendous growth over the past months, yet there is challenges all over the place. We see it with the raw material now. We see it with the workforce, that certain countries, factories have issues of getting enough talent, but also in terms of just supply chain and simple things like getting enough wood for boxes. Do you think that the traditional cigar box is something that will be challenged not solely by Tubeaux and the way the product is being displayed, but just in general because of everything that's going on? And also, what do you think about the whole boom that is currently going on in the industry, in particular when it comes to new consumers entering the ecosystem? Because ultimately that's what Tubeaux is all about as well, to offer an easier entry into the ecosystem that might otherwise be A, intimidating, or B, just not very efficient and effective when it comes to finding product on the shelf.
Yeah, great questions. So again, as I talked about, there's benefits at all levels in somehow figuring out how to incorporate Tubeaux within your individual need, whether it be manufacturer, distributor, retailer, or consumer. When I first launched Tubeaux, we would always receive the product from the manufacturers in boxes. And it pained me when I was setting these humidors up to then have all of these boxes that I had so much work that was put into. I mean, the boxes are beautiful. The boxes will always be there. They need to be there. I'll be the first to tell you that the last thing we're trying to do is say that no one ever needs to make a box again. That is the furthest from the truth. But it pained me so to see these beautiful works of art that I had no use for as soon as I installed the tubed cigars for the first time, because they had no purpose for display. And what we did is we went back to the manufacturers that wanted to participate in this space with us, and they now have started to send us the cigars in 5-pack cellophanes or 25-pack wrap tubes, both of which are not in boxes. So the benefit for the manufacturers to be able to put the product into our humidors is that they can use the boxes in more places where the demand is to keep them in a box, knowing that we don't need them. It also allowed them to cut down on the weight for their exportation costs, because they could just send the tubes in master packs. And then it also allowed for more storage in the larger humidors by having them wrapped in bundles that are 25 count or 5 count. And so we actually look at this and the impact to the manufacturers that have seen this and really, supported us, that they've been able to focus the attention of their boxes now more into the places where they're really needed when we don't have a need for them. So that's, again, some of the benefits associated with all the way up to the manufacturers. Think about the cost savings that they have, where instead of spending 10, 15, 20 or more dollars US per box, knowing that now if they're going to a TUBO destination, they can take that out of their cost of goods and focus that material into the environments that really still need them. And again, the cost of the tubes, the other benefit is that the manufacturers previously would have to pay for the tube, then put the tube inside of the box. And in most cases now, because of the cost of the savings of the box, more manufacturers can now pay for their cigars to be in tube to be able to capitalize on this environment. So where a small boutique not have been able to afford tubes and then have to put those tubes in box, now they may have the first chance ever to put a cigar in a tube and offer it in our units.
You made me think of an interesting analogy with the spirits world, where I come from originally, in the world of hospitality, because most recently I saw innovation coming into the spirits world by the means of certain companies that now offer larger receptacles and larger containers for hospitality industry, so that you wouldn't rely on your single malt scotch or in particular your pouring spirits like a gin that is in high rotation to always come in glass containers in actual bottles, but much rather in bulk, whether that's 5 or 10 liters, and then to be decanted into individual spirit bottles just at the point of sale when pouring these. And it's a similar approach where people are thinking about the footprint that we have in terms of using materials, cost of goods, and just the way that supply chains are being managed now on a global level. So that's an interesting component that I wanted to bring up. And I just see that Oleg has another question or another comment, and probably related to the spirits world again.
Yes, just a quick remark. As I'm also working in the spirit business and whiskey business, gin, etc. I know that now is a very hard situation with glass, because the price of the glass very high, and my friends from France, they started to use carbon bottles even for champagne. And it's a very unique technology and priceless also, and maybe it's our future for cigar business as well, because plastic, metal, and glass will have prices more high and higher. So as not maybe idea for you to use also carbon. So what do you think?
So great, absolutely great question. I agree. You know, the market of corrugated or cardboard is actually at some of the highest value right now that it's ever been from a recyclable perspective. Again, due to the amount of disruption in the marketplace on raw components such as aluminum and different types of metals. So you're absolutely spot on. And believe it or not, I'm actually looking right now for a photo. So the Davidoff actually, and bear with me as I find this photo because I think it'll be an important example to your point on what can be done by looking at different materials and can this still be accommodated in this space. And so I'm going to find this photo here and give you probably the clearest example that I can give you. So we did a reset again as a kind of a test, right, in my R&D facility as to can this work with other materials than just metal or other materials than glass. And as an example, this is the Winston Churchill that is in cardboard. And
nice, very nice.
I took this space that they only had one box. And again, you're all familiar with this humidor, right? And at the end of the day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And these here were cardboard. And believe it or not, I was a little bit nervous when we first tested it as to was my spring in the module going to be too tense where it would give enough pressure to move the tubes because they're either aluminum or glass, but was it going to be too much pressure that it would crush that cardboard? And it did extremely well. And so absolutely to your point, if maybe there's manufacturers who want to consider cardboard that's cheaper than the aluminum Tubeaux, we've been able to successfully test that environment as well. Again, I spent over 2 years really in trying to answer any question that I possibly could to say, until I have this thing that I think can truly address the majority of the questions that I can get folks to ask me, I didn't release it.
What do you think about, we discussed it before about the packaging of cigars as well. And one of our big friends is Oscar Valladares, who invented to wrap the additional wrapping of the cigar as a leaf by Oscar. So additional wrapper to the cigar to keep safe cigar more safety than plastic condom, as I said. So what do you think about the future of these wrappers and out of plastic?
So again, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that innovation in all forms is, so valuable. And, it's a matter of time until someone wants to figure out a better solution than maybe we've been able to come up with. At the end of the day, I think that this is going to ask so many questions and answer so many points of curiosity that it's going to hopefully make the entire industry be willing to think a little bit more outside the box as they're looking to how they're going to innovate, and maybe using us as an example on what can be done if they'll put a little bit of time and a little bit of research into it. Again, one of the most common questions that I got in the very beginning was, well, that's great that you've come up with this solution for tubes. but it's a very small minority of the market that's in tube. The rest of the market, overwhelmingly, the majority comes in cellophane. So when are you going to come up with a solution that can address the other 90+% of the market that's not in tube? And that took a tremendous amount of time, and we'll be actually showcasing and announcing that solution soon.
Especially Habana cigars as well. There are no tubes, almost no tubes, and totally no cellophane.
So, and again, great question. And I would tell you that I never invented Tubeaux or thought that Tubeaux would ever get to a point that this would be a safe place for non-cellophane or non-tube cigars. I would not recommend putting a unprotected, right, cigar into that environment. I can't control what someone may do, but at the end of the day, we never intended for this to be used for non-protected cigars, whether it be cardboard, cellophane, aluminum. That's not my intention. I wasn't trying to come in and say the entire industry must bow. No, I came in to say, I'm here to help.
Barton, you had the opportunity to meet so many individuals and professionals in the cigar industry now on all different levels and pretty much all the shareholders of this ecosystem. What would you envision and what would you wish for in terms of the retail community when the cigar industry is championing the traditional brick and mortar? Yet we all know what it comes down to is providing an experience and offering a cigar experience that goes above and beyond in comparison to other challenging parts of the industry like the online retail. Where do you think that the retail community needs to be headed in order to stay relevant in today's market? And what would you wish to see in terms of innovation on their end and in terms of providing outstanding experiences in order to still create excitement, anticipation, and eagerness with the end consumer, and to make sure that they are now more than ever relevant as the primary point of sale for premium cigars?
So my background in grocery, I ran assets and profit protection for $1 billion plus organization. And, I'm a student of retail. And, when you see how Amazon has changed the landscape of retail, as you've seen the amount of packages that are now being delivered to your home, and you look at restaurants in my local community where someone will literally pay twice the cost of the donuts that they just ordered to have them delivered to their home rather than spending the time to go drive 1 mile to pick up the donuts and save the $20 on delivery and tip. There's going to continue to be an ever increasing demand for convenience. And by no stretch of the imagination can TUBO stop or anything stop consumer behavior that's going to continue to evolve. What I can say is that brick and mortar traditional retail, distributors, manufacturers, we got to come out of the corner swinging. And the labor force to staff a location is going to continue to be tough. The costs for that labor are going to continue to rise. The real estate expenses are going to continue to become premium based. And in most cases, they're going to be faced with a decision to either get to a point to raise prices to maintain their margins. Do they pass that on to the consumer? The taxes that continue to try to come down to the manufacturers are ever pressured. They're continuous. And so the fight has to continue. And I'll answer it in a very real way. A dear friend of mine, Andrew, who owns a tobacconist location in the French Quarter, he is anticipating that after he deploys roughly 20 of these humidors based on his current sales, that he will be able to match the amount of sales that he's got coming out of his current brick and mortar location. And now that is assisting him in not having such a big hit on labor, such a big hit on overhead expenses and lease. Because again, here's a person, a live person that I've talked to regularly, who is trying to do everything that he can to figure out how to get more people into the door, how to keep them there longer, how to educate them more when they come in. And now he's got the opportunity to bring his product to them and combat the balance of what is shifting between, you used to go out to a bank and go into the lobby and know the teller's name. And now everyone's doing mobile deposit. Everyone's exchanging funds over their cell phones. The banking industry right now, as example, is trying to figure out what to do with all this real estate that they had a need for 30 years ago. Now they don't have nearly the foot traffic. So they're having to evolve. And I looked at TUBO as a, hey, this is one tool in the shed that this industry, that retailers, that distributors, that manufacturers could use to keep this industry growing, to keep addressing the demands in those locations that they weren't able to capitalize on before. So again, we got to come out swinging and keep this industry alive, not just surviving. We need to have it continue to thrive.
Which for me is the perfect segue to a question that will probably slowly bring us to the end of this wonderful segment today. When we look at the future of the industry, what has been, what currently is, and what will be, what's your predictions on the future of the industry with everything that's happening at the moment? Tremendous numbers in terms of production, exports, both to the United States and internationally, thriving business for many of the manufacturers, whilst at the same time, tremendous challenges, both from a regulatory perspective, but also changing consumer behaviors. What are some of your bold predictions and your positive outlook on the future for the industry? And how do you see TUBO perfectly coming in at the right moment in order to not only keep this business alive, but truly thriving and prospering for the future?
Reinhard, you may not like this answer, but I don't know. And I am not born into a multi-generation, family that's, built their legacy in this industry. I am an outsider. And I don't think that it would be right. And I don't think that I would be educated enough to be able to answer that question and make that prediction. I've always been someone to say, if you're really not comfortable with an answer, I think people usually do respect that you don't have all the answers. You just flat out say you don't know. And so to your initial set of questions, I don't know. What I do know is I know retail, and I know retail behavior. And I know that things are changing. And what I am confident in is that I do have a product, and we do have maybe a part of the answer on how we can continue to address some of the opportunities for growth, some of the responses to challenge. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do everything that I can just to be known as a company, as an invention, as a solution that really, did the best that I possibly could, the best that our team possibly could to try to bring about some opportunities for stability, for growth, and again, have a solution to help everybody across the industry sector come out swinging and keep this passionate, keep this romantic, unbelievable industry alive. And so again, I would just close that answer by saying my goal here is to just be referred to as somebody that's trying to help. However, the customer or partner decides they want to use us.
Changing the cigar world one tube at a time. Barton Howard, the man, the inventor of Tubeaux, thank you from heart for joining us today, for sharing everything that you shared with us, and for everything that you do for the ecosystem. Because even though we all love and sometimes romanticize the tradition and the legacy of the cigar industry, we also need to stay ahead of the game and continue to innovate in a most traditional industry that we all cherish and that we love for what it is. All about the craftsmanship, all about the continuity of one of the most intriguing and one of the finest pleasures that we have in life, and that is coming together and enjoying a wonderful cigar, as well as coming together and sharing a great conversation. Barton, it was my pleasure, honor, and privilege to welcome you to the Light 'em Up Lounge. Thank you for joining us and offering us a slightly different perspective on the industry. You know, usually when we have all the legends and the manufacturers and brand owners here sharing their story and more of an earthy look at the raw material and how things are coming together, it's just as important to think about the way product is being displayed, offered at the point of sale, how the product is being merchandised, and ultimately ends up in the hand of the consumer. And I think that you have a bright future ahead of yourself with Tubeaux and everything that you have built. And so please continue to innovate and to ask questions, because I have the slight feeling that's one of the prime talents that you have. And you've clearly showcased that with the invention of Tubeaux, and I wish you nothing but the very best. Lots of success and prosperity with your project. And again, many thanks for being here with us today and sharing your story.
Reinhard, thank you sincerely for the opportunity. It truly was an honor and a pleasure. Most importantly, I appreciate your friendship, your counsel. You've been a tremendous help to me. You know how much you've participated in this journey, with my hope and goal that I was going to have a reason to maybe one day become a guest. And, you know, I am here to serve. We're here to serve. And at the end of the day, I can't thank all of the participants that took an hour and a half out of their day to spend some time with me, learning more about my company and the vision for what we're here to do. So my sincerest of thanks for you and your guests for giving me the floor. And if there is anything that I can do, anything that Tubeaux can do, we are standing by. And again, most sincerely, thank you for the time and the opportunity. I wish you all the best and just the most successful, happy, safe 2022 and whatever your endeavors. Cheers.
Thank you from heart. Light 'em up, and we'll see you all again here at the lounge next week, next Wednesday. Many thanks and goodbye for today.
Cheers.